Okay.
So then it's like really weird spot. So then I immediately look to the dealer and I go, I didn't do anything. And the dealer has been dealing to me for years, and he goes, yeah, I know, Lex. The action's on you. And I'm like, well, what should I do? I mean, I can see his hand.
We're here with another episode here in Bart's home, in Bart's living room. We're going to be doing this. We did it with Brad Owen last month, and here I've got another vlogger here from Florida, Lex O. What's going on today, Lex? Thanks for stopping by.
Thanks for having me. Your house is beautiful.
Thank you.
It is nice to be here.
So Lex actually started vlogging, maybe 6 months ago? Something like that?
I started in February 15th was my first ever video. So not even 5 months, 4.5 months now. So.
Okay, so I actually knew your dad because your dad was a Crush Live Poker, or is a Crush Live Poker subscriber. And we talked and stuff on Telegram and things like that. So, and then I put it together. Wait a minute, this is his son. So that's pretty cool. And then you were here making a trip here in Austin. You played on TCH.
Yep. I was on TCH Live last night, Thursday night.
Yep.
And then today I'm taking a little break. And so I thought to come over here and do a little video. So.
And I think you're going to play on the Lodge on Saturday. We'll put a link up to Brad's vlog. We'll put a link up to Lex's.
Brad's vlog.
Yeah. We'll put a link up to Lex's vlog.
Yep.
And maybe some of the highlights and stuff like that from the night. So we have a hand here that we want to talk about, and it's sort of right in my wheelhouse because it has to do with, I would say, live intangibles in live poker, right? It's not really a strategy hand, although it's kind of interesting, but it's kind of a live dynamic situation that a lot of you guys that might be sort of live cash game grinders can relate to. And it has to do with, I would say, a situation with a large recreational player. He might probably say drive the game because he's putting so much money into the game. And this happened in Florida, so you can walk us through it.
Yeah, so this hand, I have my notes here on my phone. So this hand is going to be a 2-5 hand, but I normally play 5-10 with this guy. So he basically started playing after, well, I know him from after COVID, playing 5-10, just like running the game. Basically, he was given a lot of action, rebuying constantly, so great for the game. I become friends with him, so it's not like he's just a random guy. Like, I actually I'm friends with him, and he's obviously good for the game. So he is sitting at 2-5, and I'm at 2-5 waiting for the 5-10. So in this hand, I'm playing with his friend, so trying to, like, coordinate all this together. So he comes in with his friend, who I've never seen before.
Yep.
His friend sits down, who is like a novice poker player, and the big recreational player then stakes his friend and says, here's $500.
Okay.
You can play
Okay.
while I'm at the table. So I see all this interaction. So I understand that his friend is here that doesn't really play that much, and I'm going to be playing the hand with the friend. So just a little backstory on that. So the hand is actually not with the big recreational player. So playing 2-5, there's an under the gun limp for $5, and I look down at pocket queens on the button, raised to $25, folds to the small blind, who is the friend of the recreational player. He makes a call for 25, and the limper calls. So going three ways with pocket queens.
So and you're like 500-ish effective, something like that.
Yeah. So the small blind has 500 because he just bought in for 500, and then the limper probably has like 400 or 500, and then I cover them.
Is it at 500 buy-in max?
It's 1,000. It's 1,000 at Hard Rock. Okay. Yeah, 2-5, 1,000 cap.
Okay. So the friend here calls on the small blind. You've got queens on the button. You raise to 25 over the top of a limp, and then his friend, the rec, is sort of watching this, right?
Yeah. So the big recreational player knows me because he plays with me all the time, and he knows his friend, obviously, too. Right. But his friend is a newer player, so he's kind of guiding. I mean,
he doesn't really know what to do. Maybe only played poker a few times.
He's not helping him in the hand, but obviously he's saying, your first act, all this kind of stuff. So we go to the flop, which comes out Jack, 6, deuce, rainbow. So I flop an overpair.
Pretty good flop.
Yeah, pretty good flop for queens. The small blind checks, and now the limper, the under the gun limper, just leads right out for $60.
Okay.
So kind of an interesting spot. I mean, we don't have to go super deep into strategy, but I don't know if you would raise right off the bat there on this flop or not.
I mean, it's interesting because like when these guys lead like at that level, you don't have a whole lot to protect against. Also, too, like you don't because the stacks are so shallow, even if you just call here, like the pot's going to be 200, you might even tag along somebody else behind you, and like you don't really need to build the pot up. But I have raised in these spots before, and when I do raise, I'll just make it like 125.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, basically min raise.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. But I mean, I think calling is fine too. So you call.
Yeah, I call, and the small blind check calls as well. So
Okay. So
under the gun limper
Yep.
leads into me. I call 60. Small blind calls 60, and then we're going 3 ways to the turn.
pot's like 255, something like that, right? Yeah.
So the turn is another jack, so not the best card.
Not the best card.
Yeah.
Right.
And now the small blind just like snap leads out for $100.
Okay.
So
So he
kind
bets
of
out for 100.
Yeah,
on
leads
a,
right into it.
on a jack, and he's got like 300 left. I'm
Yeah.
hoping for your sake the under the gun guy folds.
Yeah, so the under the gun player just snap folds. So I'm like, I was worried obviously about the under the gun limper who maybe has like Jack 9 or Jack 10.
Right.
So I'm like, oh, what a bad turn card. But then he snap folds. So I'm like, what would the small blind be leading out here? I mean, if he doesn't know too much about poker, he might just be like, all right, I have trips. I'm just going to lead right out.
That's actually what I was gonna. What's interesting too, and by the way too, if like under the gun calls here, like I'm not saying I'm gonna fold out now, but it's a
Yeah,
shitty
it's
spot.
not
but
great,
but
yeah.
it's good. But actually, what I was gonna say, what I find interesting is like there's different levels of people's sort of poker knowledge. Like when people first start out, like say that they've only played a few times, you'd be surprised how much they accidentally fast play hands, like because they don't really know. They're like, oh, I have 3 jacks, I'm just gonna bet. Then once they get to a certain level, then they over slow play, like trapping. So yeah, I wouldn't really know because it just might be he's
Yeah,
excited and bets,
exactly.
but I'm not gonna fold, right?
No, yeah. So obviously, I don't think I can fold yet. So
Sure.
I make the call for $100.
Yep.
Going to the river, which is a 7, and now is when the hand gets a little bit weird.
So Jack 6 deuce, Jack 7, the pot's,
rainbow.
Pot's
Yep.
450. The guy's got 300 left, something like that.
I
Yeah.
have got it. So basically, this is when the hand gets a little bit weird. The action's on the small blind, and right whenever the dealer puts out the 7, I see the 7, and the action's on the small blind. The waitress comes up behind me and taps me on the shoulder, and she gives me 2 waters that I ordered.
Okay.
So I turn around and I go to tip the waitress, and I get my waters. And when I turn, I'm in the 5 seat, by the way, and the small blind is like in the 7 seat. So it'd be here, and he's just right here. So I turn to the right to get my waters. I turn back around, and when I turn back around, I see the small blind showed his hand, and he shows pocket 10s.
So you turn around, and this guy's basically has his hand revealed.
Yeah,
but obviously,
I don't even see him turn his hand over. I just turn around and I see pocket 10s. Right there.
Right. Okay.
So then it's like really weird spot. So then I immediately look to the dealer and I go, I didn't do anything. And the dealer has been dealing to me for years, and he goes, yeah, I know, Lex. The action's on you. And I'm like, well, what should I do? I mean, I can see his hand. And then this is when my friend, but not as good as friends as he is with
this guy,
chimes in, and he goes, he gets a little aggressive, which is kind of interesting. He goes, he's talking to the small blind. He says, whatever Lex bets you call, whatever he bets you call, there's no way he has a jack. I'll bet $5,000 he doesn't have trips here. Don't let him bluff you. So he's not even in the hand, and he's talking about it. So now I'm like, oh my God, what should I do? Like, I know I have the best hand, but should I check or should I bet small? Like,
this is where I have often got into, I would say, maybe you could say heated with some people about the nuances of live poker and understanding how nuanced certain situations can be. And this has absolutely nothing to do with the strategy. And this is why, too, some people will actually disagree with me. They have a right to and get on me. Whenever there is like sort of not a clear-cut rules type of situation, especially in a cash game, because usually in a tournaments they're supposed to be clear-cut, right, with TDA. But cash games, there's like there's a lot of leeway. Rooms will do different things. This is where I always say, tell me about the opponent. I'm not talking about in this spot. Well, we'll talk about this spot, but I was like, tell me about the opponent in terms of what I would do. And normally I'm talking about like whether I would call a string raise on somebody, or possibly somebody misread his hand, or maybe like somebody's cards got mucked off the table by mistake, and the floor, the sort of the room rule is that it's dead, but he had the winning hand, and I might give him the pot. But then I would always say, like, who is the guy? Who is the opponent? Depending, if he's some sort of known angler that's fucked me in the over in the past, I'm not going to give him the pot. You know what I'm saying? So I think it's very, very sort of nuanced and player dependent in these types of scenarios. In this particular situation, you basically have, the way that you've set it up is that you've got this guy that's probably driving a lot of the action in the 5-10 game.
Which is what I play. I normally play 5-10. So this guy is like, he's the guy right now.
Around that time, so he's the guy that's driving the action, right? You play 5-10. This is obviously his buddy. You're kind of friendly with him, but it sounds to me like you're kind of gauging the situation where somehow if you made a value bet all in and your friend and his friend called, he might get pissed. Is that what
I read it as the big action player would be mad at me if I tried to take advantage of his friend who was a novice player. Right. Now that I know his hand, now that I see his hand as pocket tens, if I tried to bluff him for his last 350, and I won, I was afraid that the recreational player or the big action player would get mad at me for taking advantage of his friend.
Right. Well, you weren't bluffing. For value.
No, it'd be a value bet. Yeah. So obviously, I have a huge advantage because I can see my opponent's hand.
Right.
So
this is probably how I would approach this situation. This is why, like I said, it's super, super nuanced, right? Because the game is so small, and this guy is driving the action, so he only has 350, and his friend is a novice player. Yeah. I would probably just check behind and take the pot, because when you sort of think of the long term, you're playing 5-10, probably an uncapped game. You don't necessarily want to get this guy pissed off, even though you're 100% on the right. It's just kind of like small, sort of types of things. It's almost akin to the same thing where, I've talked about situations where maybe somebody has misread their hand. It hasn't personally happened to me, but in a big game with a big recreational player, an old man coffee type, I've seen it where they've misread their hand. For some reason, they thought they had trips. They would never run a bluff like this. They moved all in. Maybe somebody called them. The guy said trips, and they turned over their hand, and he didn't have trips. And I've seen an opponent who's a well-respected sort of professional give the guy his money back. Like, he didn't take his entire $10,000 stack. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's crazy.
That was a very, very extreme situation. Yeah. But because obviously the guy misread his hand. If he didn't happen, maybe the guy wouldn't come for another 6 months. Yeah. Here in this case, because it's so small, I think in this particular case I would just check it back. Now, flip to for example, say you were playing up way higher than normal, it was a 5100 game, and this guy was a rich guy who was a super novice, and it was your friend's buddy. Maybe I would think differently, because it's a lot of money. It's 10 times more than what is normally playing. The guy's sitting in a 5100 game. But for a 2-5 game, the other thing that you could do, I suppose, is bet really small. Bet $50 and just be listen, okay, I'm going to bet $50 here because I was going to bet anyways, but I'm going to kind of let you off the hook. Or you could just bet 50 and say, I'm letting you off the hook. I'm going to bet 50. And then if he calls, I don't think it seems like the guy would be that pissed because you have the winning hand as opposed to an all-in.
Yeah, I was getting I was thinking that if I went all in for 300 and I put this guy into a tough spot, I think that the recreational player would get mad. But I didn't even think about betting small. I didn't even think about betting okay, I'm going to bet $25. I have to bet. Or
exactly.
50,
I have to bet.
Yeah.
I'm going to let you off the hook. I'm going to bet 50. Then sort of you get a little bit, and I don't think it would cause.
And it kind of keeps the integrity of the game, that it doesn't look like it's a weird spot.
So what ended up happening? What did you do?
So I asked the dealer, what should I do? The dealer's like, it's up to you. And I kind of looked at the recreational player, and I don't even think that if he got mad at me, it's not like he would not come to the game. He's still going to play in the casino. But I just didn't want to have any weird bad blood with this guy where he was annoyed with me, so then maybe he wouldn't give me action in a 5-10 game, or that he would, talk about me to other action players or something. So I thought for a while, and I'm like, look, it's not worth it. It's only $300. Yeah. So I check back and show pocket queens, which is obviously going to win. And I think it was the best case scenario because the whole table kind of respected that the guy made a mistake and then I let him off easy. Than if I would have just bet $300, and then if I bet 300 and he calls and I show pocket queens, people are like, oh, okay, you had the best hand, but it's kind of not the nicest move.
I want to add a wrinkle to this. So let's just say, forget about the fact. Let's say it's not his friend. Let's say that it was a guy who was a recreation. So let's say instead of this guy's friend, it was some guy that wasn't a reg, but maybe a small losing player, recreational player. He thought you checked. Obviously, you didn't. The action's on you. Let's just think about this from a perspective of the hand. So throw all that stuff out the window. What do you think the best bet size is when someone's accidentally exposed their hand? Because obviously you have the information, so it could be like you're bluffing.
Yeah.
But would you think that someone would think you have the balls to really bluff all in? Because you called the turn, right? You call. What do you have?
Yeah.
You called the turn.
I mean, if it wasn't for the recreational player that plays at 5'10",
right,
I would have went all in.
And
I mean, that sounds kind of bad, but then again,
I don't think
we're playing poker.
Yeah, it's not
it's
bad.
your money.
No,
it's
your
job to protect your hand. And I didn't do anything slimy. I didn't like move my hand while I turned around. Like I clearly didn't check. So if it wasn't with the recreational player who drove the 5-10 games, I would have for sure bet. But I'm
just trying to think about ideal bet sizing because I just don't feel like you have that many bluffs all in because you call the turn.
But I think with these kind of with people, they think you're pushing them around.
Yeah,
maybe the best size would just be all in to look like a bluff to try to get called by any pair.
I always tell. I think that I've done a YouTube. Well, I spoke about this on a call-in stream, and I know I've talked about my podcast. This guy, I think they call him Frank the Tank. He's played. He might even be from Florida. I think he's.
I've seen him in Florida. Yeah,
yeah.
I've seen him on.
He's like half Korean, half white. So he's a mixed guy, and like a lot of times he drinks at the table, and sometimes and there was this hand that went down after a Live at the Bike stream where he called my 3-bet. Like he opened for a raise. I 3-bet him, I think, with pocket sixes. We were like 10K deep. We were playing a big game. He called, and then he's just like, I'm going to beat you. And then he just turns his hand over, and it's Queen Jack. He's out of position. So now I know what his hand is.
I think I remember seeing
seen
this.
Yeah. I know what his hand is. And basically what ends up happening is that he doesn't flop anything. So I bet for value with sixes. And I'm trying to figure out the correct sizing, right? Turn doesn't have anything. I think the board pairs or something. It's like pair of fours.
So you bet the flop he calls.
He calls with Queen Jack. His hands face up, out of position. Turn, no help for him. I think it's like 9-8-3-3 or so, or maybe 9-7-3-3. He didn't even have a straight draw. So he calls again on the turn. I'm trying to figure out like the amount to bet. And then the river's a jack. The river's a jack, right? So he checks, and I'm like, I have like 8,000. The pot's like 1,500, but I'm not going to fucking move all in. He's going to call for sure. So I lost.
So you just checked?
I checked behind and I lost because, I mean, I had the guy showing his hand. I had lost to a guy that showed his hand face up. But it's pretty crazy. But Lex, thanks for that hand. And again, you put out a vlog, what once a week, something like that?
I've been trying to do 6 a month now. So I do 1 a week, and then 2 the next week, 1 the next week, 2 the next week. Trying to, not too many vlogs, but enough to kind of get it out there.
And where's the next place that you're traveling to?
As of right now, I don't really have a schedule for next up. I'm going to a wedding in Maryland in August. So I think I'm going to go to Maryland Live and MGM National Harbor in August, I think, but I haven't set that in stone yet. So I think that might be the next traveling vlog that I'll do.
Okay, great. Yeah. Well, we're going to definitely do another hand here with Lex, so look for that coming up.